My name is Gilberto Machado. I work at Klabin in the supply department, and I was invited to talk to you about a major project I took part in, myself and other people from Klabin. And it wasn't just a project in a major company. We joined people together in order to overcome a great objective, which was that of manufacturing ventilators at a very difficult time for the world, where everyone was chasing parts to make ventilators. That was our objective, to manufacture 6,800 ventilators in record time, where, well, we'd have to produce a month's worth in practically one day. Basically, that was the objective, and now I'll tell you a bit about this experience. We had to go out of our normal everyday activities. We continued doing our Klabin duties, but we were very honored to take part in such a grand project. Our objective, the Klabin team, was to produce 6,500 ventilators, 740 ventilators of this model here, called FlexiMag Plus, and 5,760 transport ventilators for emergency use, the ones that you take in ambulances. They were in shortage in Brazil, and our major objective was to double or even more, increase more this production. We counted on the help of a few companies. The structure of the project was basically broken down into logistics, supply chain, production, government relations, PMO. So Klabin took part in supply chain, logistics, with very strong support in these segments, where we had a procurement team seeking out alternatives and purchasing materials, not just in Brazil, but worldwide. So the challenge was to find parts. We had some key components that were really a hindrance to the production line. So the control and the logistics involved for this was very aggressive. It was like a wartime operation, really, that we carried out. This is showing a bit of the timeline, how everything started. It started in March, 22nd of March 2020, where everything started. And we assembled at the Magnamed plant, the largest ventilator manufacturer in Brazil. So we were invited to take part in a meeting, and the objective there at the meeting was to multiply our production by 2 in order to greatly increase the amount of ventilators. Because the amount that we have in Brazil today, even if we double production, it still won't be enough. People will die due to a shortage of ventilators. So there we were at the meeting, and the reason for the meeting was to assess the structure of Magnamed, currently the largest ventilator producer in Brazil. So we were there visiting the factory on a Sunday morning, in the middle of at the beginning of the pandemic. It was getting worse. Looking at that structure, and we said, no way, this is not enough, this location. So we thought, where will this production take place? The first challenge, where will it be? What team will we use? How are we going to organize ourselves? So we had many questions at this first meeting. And from there on, we started to have daily, weekly meetings. We practically started, actually, the first production after the 22nd of March. On the 12th of April, we were already manufacturing the first ventilator in a very short amount of time. So we called another company, Flex, from Sorocaba. They gave us their space and their production line for this assembly. Part in many phases. I've said, Klabin is not just me. Other people took part in the project. I actually participated in all challenges with our team, and then looking at the end, on the 31st of July, we were able to manufacture 5,818 ventilators with 100% of all materials received. Then we followed the line to 6,800. So we completed the timeline. So it was a very difficult challenge, overcome with a lot of hard work. So what were these main challenges, right? I just want to tell you a quick story about how things played out. We had challenges with regard to procurement, logistics, production, from critical items. Yeah, there are critical items to build a ventilator, just like there are when we have to produce paper. Imagine for a ventilator when the whole world is chasing parts and countries are closed off to sell the few ventilators that they had. So our attitude had to be, well, we're going to have to manufacture them. We're going to have to learn how to manufacture ventilators, with the support of companies who know about this process, as in the case of Magnamed. But they could not operate this in a way as to double their production, or, as the case was, multiply it by 30. In other words, to do much, much more than is usually done in a day. Critical items, for example, and how will we issue these orders? Will this be done by Klabin, Suzano, and other participating companies? Are they going to issue an order on behalf of Magnamed? What are the benefits? How is this all going to be paid for? Fallout control for parts coming in from all over the world. Inbound logistics, mapping the flows. How's that going to be done? Are we going to hire agents? How are these collections going to take place? So great, huge challenges for production. We know how to produce paper at Klabin, but now we're getting into a totally different market. But for sure, the expertise of these professionals who took part in the project, in-house I mean, Klabin, Suzano, other participating companies, we were able to bring this expertise into our day-to-day work. So little by little we were able to overcome things using our knowledge about flow inside the industry to manufacture ventilators. So we moved on. We went through challenges involving delivery modals, shipping. It came to a point where the federal government themselves made Air Force planes available for us to pick up parts from anywhere in the world, especially China, who was our main foreman. In the end, we didn't even use them, but they were there available if we wanted to. Then the assembly line. What should we do about oxygen? How are we going to make it available on the assembly line for production, for tests, the critical pathways, and then packaging? How are we to package all these ventilators? So Klabin contributed with the packagings, not just packages, but layout, production. Now going back to supplies, which was the main focus of production, since we had an assembly line that was ready. So going back to supplies, where we had the major objective and the major challenge, which was about supplies to find parts around the world. This is a summary of what happened right from the production beginning till production end. So there were 94 suppliers involved, 227 product codes, to manufacture a ventilator, and 1,950,000 components procured. That's a lot. That's a lot to manage and to take care that it arrives. Now, looking at the logistics, we had 110 days operation time, production, 63 import processes, $1.89 million, the value imported, the amount, 4.4 days. Number of people who took part in the production. Flex provided the space. All of this was previously prepared. The manufacturer of the ventilator, Magnamed, was present and provided the training, so we participated from the beginning. You know, how do you take 200 Flex employees who don't know how to manufacture ventilators? How are they going to start to do this? So that was the challenge, you know, to gather a number of companies that had no idea of how to manufacture ventilators and then get 200 people to start building ventilators overnight. And you remember the timeline, right? Between the very first meeting on March 22nd until April the 12th, there were already ventilators that were leaving the assembly line. In other words, a very short period of time. We had to organize how the manufacturing structure would be, the workbenches, the benches, how to get the oxygen to the workbenches, train these workers. So I think that each company had an important role. Each person, especially each person, dedicated themselves in a special, different way, going the extra mile to be able to manufacture ventilators, which was our major challenge. The clabin packaging, the boxes were there at all times. And here, just to give you an idea of how things happened, on the left we see a ventilator used for testing. On the right at the top, the manufacturing workstations, and below, the ventilators ready for shipping with the clabin boxes at the back. And finally, this is the image that I won't forget, which I think marks this project. That sentence, together helping Brazil to breathe. All these companies, Flex, Suzano, Klabin, White Martins, Positivo, who joined forces for a greater goal. And what was that goal? To save lives. And it was not just an attitude by a large company or by large companies. I think this is about the attitude of a number of people who fully dedicated themselves to do something that we would never have imagined ourselves doing, and above all, to have the opportunity to save lives. I think that's the gratitude I have for having taken part in this project and for having had the opportunity to have perhaps contributed towards saving lives. I think that is unforgettable. That really touched me, as I'm sure it touched other people who took part. It wasn't just myself and Klabin who took part. This is the story of everyone who took part. It was indeed very gratifying because we continue to provide support through donations. I know Klabin is making direct donations of ventilators to areas where there is still great need. Despite the huge amount that was produced, there is still a shortage. So yeah, it was all very gratifying. Thank you very much.